So let's talk about free speech while we are still free to do it. The United Kingdom hired a new free speech defender through the Department of Education, but they are also spying on you. Those two pieces of news launched simultaneously this weekend, and we thought it was worthwhile to put them together because don't get too crazy about that idea of free speech. So for now, you can say what you want, but they will catch you. Here is the new free speech czar. It was announced just last week that the Department of Education has hired Professor Arif Ahmed to be tasked with investigating breaches to the Freedom of Speech Act with this new title, Free Speech Czar. I don't know. Could we have come up with a better name like Free Speech Defender? I don't know about the word czar. Anybody?
No.
Anybody? Like
to me,
like free speech
speaker?
guy.
Free
Like,
speech guy?
like guy with like several Y's.
Okay.
Guys, anytime there's a czar, it always to me seems like an expansion of government.
Okay. Maybe. I mean, I think this guy has been putting his money where his mouth is for a long time. Just earlier this year, he was under fire because he invited Helen Joyce to speak at his university. Here he is earlier in the year talking about the right to offend people as a civil liberty. Listen.
A right is not a duty. A right is not something that has no consequences. A right is not something it's always, or even perhaps very often, a good idea to engage in. A right is just something that you can't be prevented from doing by the coercive power of the state. And that's what we mean by a right. And as for offence is not stirring up racial hatred. Offence is not incitement to violence. Offence is not harassment. And I do not defend the rights to do those things. The right to offence means that you can't be prosecuted and you can't be put in prison. You can in many countries, but that you should not be put in prison for doing something just because it's offensive. And the definition of offensive is, in a dictionary, is causing annoyance and displeasure and resentment and anger. Doing things that have those effects is not by itself grounds for being thrown into prison or being prosecuted by the state. That's what we're saying.
Okay. Now, you probably could hear that he had protesters outside of that speech because the fact that he has what's called politics by cooties. He has cooties because he was associated with Helen Joyce. Helen Joyce wrote the book Trans, and she talks about how gender ideology has a social contagion. And she speaks against the biopharmaceutical complex that is feeding the social contagion of gender ideology. So even being associated with her has given him cooties. And after he invited her to speak earlier this year, Cambridge had to apologize, or chose to apologize, for distressing students. Because, again, trans activists protested the event. The dean of the school even wrote this preemptive email apologizing for even having it and discouraging people for coming. And in fact, last week when Kathleen Stock spoke, another gender critical professor, she needed bodyguards to speak at all because in the past she has said the words that men cannot be women and biological sex is immutable. And I just can't get this image out of my mind. The fact that a woman, a lesbian, has to have bodyguards for saying that men can't be women in the year 2023. That just keeps rolling around in my head this weekend.
Well, as George Galloway said, as we were talking with him last night, and he said he couldn't believe that people are literally talking about ending this woman's life because of her speech.
Yeah.
Ending her life because of her speech.
Well, not because of this speech, but because the speech had nothing to do with gender, but because she exists.
Because she exists,
yes.
And what she stands for and what she says.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because of these talks by these gender critical women, the universities have been offering these comfort services, like you can come, we'll talk to you, much like the Brown University event in 2013, where students were offered a room with like cookies and rainbows and puppies frolicking. This is now what college students need, like a nap time and a blankie. Now, Professor Asif says that he is going to make it his job to investigate people who don't get that far, who don't get to speak, who get their invitations canceled. He says this need is urgent. And he's going to be investigating any kind of breaches, such as canceling a talk on a woman's rights due to political pressure, or even disciplining a lecturer for provocative anti-monarchist tweets. It's It's very specific. But, we do know that, for instance, someone in California at I think Santa Clara University was disciplined for giving away those gender critical chocolate bars, things like that. Is that his free speech to say that there are two biological genders? Is it his right or not? This is something that will be investigated now in the United Kingdom in a official government way. That guy's going to be busy. But while he's making sure British people can say what they want, the British government will be busy spying on them while they do so. Here is an investigation this weekend from The Telegraph reporting that the UK and the US government are paying a firm to, quote, ingest material from social media that they identify as problematic. Here is the firm. It's called Logically. They've received more than 1.2 million pounds of taxpayer money to analyze disinformation and misinformation. It does this by ingesting material from more than hundreds of thousands of media sources and your social networks using AI to identify those that are potentially problematic. The firm was started 6 years ago by a 27-year-old Cambridge student who first put it to the test during the elections in his native India. He says it deploys one of the world's largest dedicated fact-checking teams spread between the UK, Europe, and India. So, okay, do we think AI is the most responsible entity for fact-checking and disinformation, given what we've been through since the pandemic? Well, he talks about here that other blue chip clients include U.S. federal agencies. Who, I wonder?
Oh, interesting.
As an American passport holder, I'm interested. What government contracts do you have with the United States that you're ingesting social media and marking behaviors and downranking them accordingly? They also have a partnership in quotations with Facebook.
Black Swan in our chat says indigestion.
Indigestion, right?
Yeah.
And they work with Facebook fact checkers, hugely influencing what people see. Here is some of the things that they're up to. Now, there's something here that I want to point out, because we saw this last week when we talked about the World Health Organization and infodemics. Well, this plays right into it. It says documents show that they had been producing regular COVID-19 misinformation reports, right, for the government. The title suggests the aim was to target posts that breach the terms of service on their platforms, but they also disclosed that they were sort of sweeping up legitimate posts by respected figures such as this Dr. Alex DeFigueiredo, and the statistics and the lead at the Vaccine Confidence Project. Now, this former minister told the Telegraph, oh, that must have been a mistake, right? But he says context matters. So it matters even if something is true. The Telegraph reports that this program is sweeping up data and downranking and marking behaviors around anti-vaccine behavior and anti-lockdown behavior. And a spokesperson for this firm, Logically, says that they strongly believe in freedom of speech. They say they are not limiting it. But if you take a look here, it talks about how they can limit speech if they think it's inaccurate or wrong. But even if it is accurate, if it's disseminated in context in a way that they think will promote problematic behavior, well, who defines problematic behavior? The government does. They will then sweep it up and downrank it as well. So, here we have that the governments are actively using software to track and downrank and tag users' behavior. But at the same time, they're giving lip service to free speech. So is that one step forward, two steps back? One step forward, three steps back? Because this has been going on since before the pandemic. We're just finding out about it now. So, fight Dr. Ahmed for all the free speech you want. But while we do that, Big Brother will be watching.
I'm reading this. I'm reading this as like you can say whatever you want, but you can't say what we don't want you to. So you basically you just have to want to say what we want you to, and you have the freedom to do that and nothing else.
I mean, you can show up at universities and we'll pump our fists in the air and be like, look, we got Kathleen Stock a podium. Yay. Right. But say what she says online and you're in deep doo-doo. That's how I read it.
Thank you so much for watching this segment here at Redacted. We are live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, trying to share the stories that the mainstream media will not cover. You should also come over and join our community of Redacted Rebels over at redacted.inc. That's our private locals community where we can share exclusive content that we simply cannot share here on YouTube. Come over and join the rebellion together right now by going to redacted.inc. We'll see you next time.